Hello, dear viewers. I am a global nationalist, and today I'm going to be talking about the US midterm election results and Donald Trump's announcement of his candidacy for President of the United States. Let's begin. Well, he's done it. Trump has announced his candidacy. He's going to run in 2024 to be the president again. So, to understand how Trump's chances are, we need to also look at the latest results for the midterm elections. Now, you might be wondering why I waited a week for a video on this. It's because I wanted to wait for all the results to get in. And I knew that some states in the US are taking several days to count the results, so this is why I waited, and now I'll discuss them. So let's begin. So here in the House of Representatives, we can see that Democrats have won 209 seats and Republicans have won 217. So we can assume, and it's projected by the media, that the Republicans will get 218 seats, which more than 218 seats, which will be enough for them to win the House of Representatives. And the Democrats will be in the opposition this time. But you can see it's a very close victory for the Republicans. It's not overwhelming. So there will be a lot of opposition from the Democrats in the House. I do wish the Republicans had done better. They should have, in my opinion. In the Senate, the Democrats and got 48 seats and Republicans 49. So again, we can see that Republicans are leading, but because the results for all the Senate seats haven't been announced, we can't say for certain who will win the Senate. So I can't speak much on this yet. But again, we can see that Republicans aren't blasting the Democrats thoroughly, which they could have. Then governors. Democrats have got 24 governor's seats, and Republicans have got 25 governor's seats. Again, all the state elections haven't been uh, announced. The results haven't been announced, so can't say much. But again, we can see that the Republicans haven't done as well as they could have. But in all three of these elections, House, Senate, and governorship, so far the Republicans have got more seats than the Democrats. So it shows that there is, while uh, the country is not overwhelmingly in favor of one party, there is a slight tilt to the Republicans. This is what I want to show for Donald Trump's endorsements in this general election. I'm specifically talking about the general election and not the primary election. I want to divide these elections into battleground elections and all the elections. The battleground elections are elections which take place in seats where Republicans could lose, where it's not a safe seat for them. And same goes for Democrats. It's not a safe seat for either Dems or Reps, could go either way. And all the elections include the seats which could go to either party and the seats which would most likely go to one party or the other. And there's not any doubt as to who would win that seat. So here we can see in all the elections, we can see that Donald Trump's endorsements have won 86% of their elections. So this is a really, really good uh, endorsement ratio for all the elections. It goes to show that in the safe seats, he's not causing the endorsed candidates to lose. If they were losing in the safe seats as well, then this endorsement percentage will be much less. But in the battleground elections, only 38% of the candidates he endorsed. So yeah, the battleground elections, majority of the candidates that he endorsed did not win. So uh, that could show that um, where the Republicans have challenges from Democrats, then Trump doesn't help them win. But again, this is not a terrible record. It's not like only 10 or 20% won, 38%. That's a good solid chunk of candidates who won. Good support base he has, but it's still not enough for majority of them to win. So yeah, that shows that um, at least people who voted Democrat didn't cross over to Republicans enough to vote for Trump, for his candidates. And we can see the same pattern repeated in the House Senate elections. In the House, 93% of his endorsed candidates won all the elections, while 43% won the battleground election. In the Senate, 74% of the candidates he endorsed won all the elections, and in the battleground elections, only 43% won. And in the governor's elections, 45% of the candidates he endorsed won, while in the battleground elections, 22% of the candidates he won were elected. So, what does this show? We can see that uh, Democratic voters are not crossing to the Republican side to vote for candidates voted that were endorsed by Trump. But in seats which are safe for Republicans, Trump's endorsed candidates are winning. So we can see that Republican voters are not turned off by Trump. They're not choosing not to vote for a candidate because he endorsed them. In fact, it's quite likely that in Republican strongholds, it's because he endorsed these candidates that they won. His weakness is in the battleground seats and elections. So somehow he needs to do better to appeal to Democratic voters and to independents. I think if more independents voted in for his candidates in the battleground elections, then these percentages would be higher. Now let's look at Joe Biden's endorsement record. Now I could not find any info on battleground elections where Biden's candidates were endorsed, so I can't talk about that. I can only talk about all the elections. For his total endorsement record is 78%, which is less than Trump, and his House endorsement record is less than Trump. But for governors, he has 100% endorsement record, which is more than double Trump's. So what can we say is that uh, would include battleground elections, not just the safe elections, because it's all the elections. So we can see that his endorsements, his candidates are only getting 78% of the votes, which probably shows that uh, mainly the hardcore Democrats are voting for him and some independents, but very few Republicans. I think the reason why uh, Trump's uh, endorsements got a higher success rate is because even though they didn't do well in battleground elections, they didn't get enough Democratic votes to win those. In uh, They still got enough votes from Democrats in safe seats for them to win in those seats. So he didn't, in those seats, they didn't only rely on Republican voters. But Biden seems to be relying on almost uh, completely on his Democratic voter base to vote for his candidates and is not getting enough crossover votes from Republicans. And perhaps also independents have turned away from him. This is probably why at the federal level his endorsements were low, but in the governors where his influence is less and generally people would focus more on state issues rather than what the president is endorsing, there Democrat his candidates got 100% vote. So perhaps people simply because they didn't they Biden's low approval ratings are preventing his endorsed candidates from winning at the federal level where his endorsement matters more, but where in the states where his endorsement matters less, people seem to be ignoring that and are focusing on their candidate himself or herself, and are voting for those candidates, and they're good enough for them, so they get 100% of their candidates are elected. And so there we can see that is now a candidate. He is not yet the nominee. He has to go to the primaries, and we can see that his strengths are one, that he is good with the Republican voters. He gets almost 90% of their votes, more than 90%. There is no wavering from that. They support him. And two, he is getting some votes from Democrats and independents. Not the majority of them, but he is getting some. And he's getting more votes across the aisle than Biden is. And so that's his two plus points. His weakness is that he's not getting enough votes from Democrats to turn most of them into Republican voters. So that's his one weakness, as I see. And uh, that's with reference to, that's just the political plus points and minus points. If you talk about his time as president, I will take a much longer to talk about his what he did good, what he did bad, but I can just give an outsider's perspective. His foreign policy was better than almost all other presidents before him and much better than Joe Biden's. His relationship with India was good, even though he raised tariffs against India. People in India, the Indian government included, recognized he was just acting in his country's interest and wasn't being hostile to India. So we managed that. But when Biden basically, not him directly, but his government kind of lectures India about human rights, when they withheld for some time raw materials that India needed to produce vaccines for COVID 19 in 2021, when cases were rising at a very fast rate in India, and when he's sent, I'm saying he because he's commander in chief, he sent ships into India's territorial waters, even though India does not allow that. So we can see that he's somehow been a little kind of going against India a bit, and he's now uh, giving military and financial aid to Pakistan. The US has supported Pakistan getting out of the Financial Action Task Force, where Pakistan had been on the grey list due to its support of terrorism, and now the US supported getting Pakistan out of it, which hurts India because now Pakistan will increase its support of terrorists, sending more terrorists to India, So, yeah, we can see that Biden's administration is taking actions which hurt India, while Trump's administration was uh, doing the opposite. I don't really have a say on. I'm not going to tell you, the viewer, especially if you're an American, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I'm just going to tell you who I support. And I support Trump more than Biden. And I hope he wins the nomination and the election. But I understand that there are other contenders in the Republican Party, such as Ron DeSantis. And if he becomes the nominee, I think he'll do okay, but just not as good as Trump, but still better than a Democrat. So yeah, that's it. I'm not very happy with the performance of the Republicans in the midterms, but I know they've won the House, and as a nationalist who supports American nationalists, I am happy for them for winning the House, but I wish that they will do better in the future, especially in the presidential election. I really hope that Trump wins that MAGA comes back. I just want to end this video by wishing good luck to the people of the United States of America. And if you want to see other videos related to elections, click here. If you want to see my previous video, click here. If you want to see the sources I use for this video, click the links in the description below. Thank you for watching. Vande Mataram.